This is a Sports Catastrophe production.
Hey there, Heather Ho there, it's Jeff Cutter Diamond welcoming you to another Sports Catastrophe on this day. Now, I know this will be unusual on this day because of the fact that this on this day is in a sport that doesn't really be considered a sport or anything else. But this is an important moment for Canadian wrestling fans around the world. And of course, you know the national pride I have and all that. So it was today, October 12th, 1992, when Canada finally got a WWE champion. You'd be thinking, well, that's impossible. But it's not. So anyway, the modern lineage of the WWE title went back to 1963 when it was the WWF, or World, then Wide Wrestling Federation. In 1963, Buddy Rogers won a match in under a minute to be the first ever WWF sanctioned champion as they split off from the NWA, or the National Wrestling Alliance. Many people like Pedro Morales, Dan Stasiak, Ivan Koloff, superstar Billy Graham, Bruno Sammartino, Andre the Giant for a minute, Hulk Hogan, Sergeant Slaughter, The Ultimate Warrior, and Macho Man Randy Savage had the WWF title in their hands. 1992 was very huge because it was basically a back and forth hot potato WWF thing between Ric Flair, the guy who Bret Hart beat, and Macho Man Randy Savage. Flair won the title at the 1992 Royal Rumble after Hulk and Undertaker's famous double debauchery. So Flair won the Royal Rumble with a tear in his eye, and basically the perfect line delivered by him, Bobby the Brain Heenan, and Mr. Perfect. We're not the type of guys that say we told you so, but we told you so. And then, of course, you know, he won the title, and then there was a massive program. It was supposed to be Flair versus Hogan for the WWE belt at WrestleMania 8 in Indiana, and it would have been one of the greatest matches of all time, greatest dream matches. The WWF champion, of course I'm saying WWF because at the time it was called WWF, Hulk Hogan, well, the former champ Hulk Hogan, and the WCW face of the 80s, Ric Flair. So Hogan would face Flair. And unfortunately, though, house shows didn't really produce magic, so they decided to split off the program. Flair would face Macho Man for the WWE belt at WrestleMania, and Hogan would be put in a match against Sid Justice, in which Hogan would basically retire from the WWF afterwards. Hogan faced Sid, of course, famous for the late run-in of Papa Shango, and then the Ultimate Warrior returning and saving Hogan, and unfortunately not doing well in the 92 thing. And of course, Macho Man beating Ric Flair for the WWF title. Unfortunately, though, Macho Man would lose it back to Flair. I believe it was before SummerSlam, but anyhow. So Flair still had the belt around his waist when he would face Bret Hart in Saskatoon, of all places, for the WWF title. It was basically a house show, because what type of major event would you have in Saskatoon? Although they would tape it for Superstars of Wrestling with Lord Alfred Hayes, and I believe, was it Gorilla Monsoon? I think it was. So anyway, they would fight each other, and Bret Hart was a young up-and-comer who came into the WWF in the late 80s, mostly for tag team gold with his brother-in-law Jim the Anvil Neidhart. So Bret was a decent singles wrestler. He won the Intercontinental belt from Mr. Perfect in 1991 at SummerSlam, which was a famous day for the Hart family. And then in 92, he was the Intercontinental champion for a while after beating Roddy Piper at WrestleMania in a famous babyface versus babyface match. So that was just humongous and all that. So it was time to give the strap to Bret Hart, because WWF was trying hard to get away from the Hogan era. So they figured giving Bret the strap would be huge. So at a house show in Saskatoon. Bret Hart manages to beat Ric Flair with a sharpshooter, kind of a Boston Crab. Flair tapped out, and Bret Hart was the WWF champion, and it was amazing because it was for the first time ever a Canadian-born wrestler was the WWF champion. You look at all those names, they were all American or foreign-born. Like Bruno Sammartino was Italian-born. But now Canadians could have a champion to cheer for. And it wasn't like Canada was new to the WWF and all that. They would host lots of house shows at Maple Leaf Gardens in Toronto because Maple Leaf Wrestling and all that. And for years, Canadians could watch major WWF shows. Well, it wasn't Superstars of Wrestling. It was Cavalcade. They packaged the matches of Superstars of Wrestling and all that as Cavalcade on Channel 11 in Canada. And I remember watching a lot of them with my mom. So that's kind of neat. So anyway, yeah. So was it a good idea to give Bret Hart the strap and basically put Flair in a bad position? Kind of worked. I mean, Ric Flair 3 months later would leave the WWF back to greener pastures in the WCW when all was seemingly forgiven for Flair leaving the company in the first place in late 91. But, Flair had some good matches and all that. And, it took him years to come back to the WWF, only because he was part of the Invasion angle. And all that. As for Bret Hart, well, putting the strap on him was huge because he got put into many programs, including a famous ladder match that doesn't get talked about because people assume that the Razor Ramon Shawn Michaels match from WrestleMania 10 was the first true ladder match, which was not, as Bret Hart would face Shawn Michaels for the strap in a ladder match. In a strange type of ladder match, but a ladder match nevertheless. So that was huge. And Bret Hart carried the strap into 1993. He was then put into a program against Yokozuna, who was this monster heel from Japan, seemingly from Japan. I believed it. Unfortunately, he was from Samoa, the real guy. Randy, I don't know why. I'm like, ugh. But anyway, Bret Hart was still the WWE champion when 93 rolled around. Unfortunately, he would lose it controversially to Yokozuna at WrestleMania 9, and then Yokozuna dropped the belt to Hulk Hogan, who used backstage politics to win the belt. Bret Hart was supposed to face Hogan at SummerSlam in 93 in one of the most poignant matches of all time. Icon versus icon. Unfortunately, Hogan refused to do the job, and he would lose the belt to Yokozuna on purpose so that he wouldn't have to face Bret Hart. What an egotistical piece of you-know-what. It wasn't Bret's last time with the WWE belt when he's had it at least, 5 or 6 times. Famously, in 94, he had the WWE belt when he was in a program against Owen Hart, his own brother. And they had that classical match to start 94 at WrestleMania 10. Bret Hart would, of course, lose the strap one of his times in 1997, famously in the Montreal Screwjob, and left the WWE and would not come back for 13 years, finally making peace with Shawn Michaels and Vince McMahon. Bret Hart is still the best there was, the best there is, and the best there ever will be. Well, at least in Canada. Anyhow, I'm Jeff Diamond, I do.